This Sunday, we will celebrate the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, two pioneers of the early church. Now, you may remember Peter as being one of Jesus's 12 disciples, the one that Jesus said, "On this rock, Peter, you will build my church." And later he would lead in the book of Acts, the early church and the building of sharing the good news, the gospel with Jewish communities. And Paul, you may remember mostly if you've read in Acts his story of being a devout Jew, one that was converted to the way by a vision of Jesus while he was on the road to Damascus. And he would be one that would be preaching the gospel to the Gentiles. And so we have both these early church people, Peter and Paul, who established the church we know today. But one question that may be lingering for us is, what does it mean to be a saint? And why are we celebrating a day like this? Now, if you grew up in the Catholic Church, you may have heard the term canonization of saints, people who have passed, who lived a life that was faithful to God, one that served and loved those in need, and that they have a whole list of people that they have canonized as saints, and they have that title before their name. And then maybe you grew up in a tradition where maybe that wasn't spoken at all. Or if you grew up Lutheran, maybe you've heard this term that we are simultaneously both saint and sinner. Martin Luther described that we are all saints because we are made righteous by God through Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. We are made righteous to do good in this world, that through the power of the Spirit that guides us and leads us and prompts us, that we are able to be that source of good in the world. And then at the same time, we also are sinners, that recognizing that we live in a broken world. We live in a world where we do fall short from time to time. But the good news is, because of what Christ has done for us, that we are not dead to sin, but that we are renewed and forgiven and given grace. But we live in both of those realities, that we are capable of doing good in ways that serve God and neighbor, and that times we do fall short of the glory of God. Now, one thing I think that sticks in people's minds, though, when they think of saint, is maybe not that dual idea, that we are capable of both. That sometimes when you hear the term saint, maybe you've heard it when people say, "Oh, you're a saint," like if you do something good, like we have that in our everyday speech. I think with that, it's kind of thinking, oh, it has to be somebody, if you're a saint, you've done all the right things. You have this list of things that, you're better than everybody because look at all the good decisions you have made. But the reality is, when you look at the stories of Peter and Paul, they were far from perfect people. Peter, during Jesus's own ministry, had moments where he too questioned Jesus and what he was doing. He had a moment where Jesus was at the cross and he denied Christ 3 times. And then for Paul, Paul was the one that was going after these early followers of the way, going after Peter and the other disciples, the followers of the church. He was killing Christians. But God, through people who maybe are not perfect people, like Peter and Paul, God was still at work. And it shows to us that God can work through any way possible, even if it seems like the most unlikely of people. And in our gospel this week, this Sunday, we're going to hear Jesus ask Peter 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" And this is the scene after Jesus has resurrected and appeared to his disciples, spent time with them before he ascends. And he asked Peter this question kind of in the midst of not really talking about the denial part that happened. And so he asked Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "You know I love you, Lord." And then Jesus says to him, "Feed my lambs." And again, he asks Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "You know I love you, Lord." And Jesus responds saying, "Tend my sheep." And then Jesus asks Peter a third time, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter is feeling a little insecure that Jesus keeps asking this question, especially after he answers it. And he tells him again to feed my sheep. And he ends with telling him, "Follow me." You know, the reality of a saint is that Jesus knew that Peter was going to mess up. Jesus even told him that he was going to mess up. And yet, he saw the gifts that Peter had. He still called him to do these things. He gave him the chance to do it again, to remind him of what the mission is, that it never stopped after the denial of Christ. When Jesus appeared to Saul, who later changed his name to Paul, he said to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" Jesus called out what he was doing, and he turned him in a different way, gave him new eyes to see, gave him a new direction of where this new creation, this new church was calling Paul to be a part of. To be a part of God's story that continued, that didn't stop at the crucifixion at the cross, but that lived on through the Spirit, working through Peter, working through Paul, working through people who are not perfect people. So sainthood is not about, having everything like listed out. I've done all these things right, or you have to reach a certain ranking of things. No, it's the reality that through even us who maybe don't feel equipped or maybe feel like we mess it up, that God can still work through us, that we are saints that can share in this good news to follow Jesus's calling. Jesus doesn't ask for perfection, but he does ask for us to listen, to go, to serve, and to love one another. So to be a saint is to be a follower of Jesus, showing up in our full selves, knowing that we won't always get it right. To be a saint is to not say it's a Jesus and me theology where it's just my own glory in what I have done. Instead, being a saint is hearing Jesus' question, "Do you love me?" and responding with a yes, and hearing Jesus say to us, "Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, follow me." And may we, through the power of the Holy Spirit, have new eyes to see, recognizing our own sinner and saint status, and recognizing that we too have a part in this ministry in the world with all the other saints that God calls. Thanks be to God, and see you this Sunday.